Welcome back to the kitchen. We're here to talk about holiday entertaining, specifically Thanksgiving. And I'm not talking turkey, but the sides are the star of the show. And today I'm going to teach you how to make a gluten-free and dairy-free stuffing. So if you have been living under a rock here in the Midwest and you haven't heard about the Native Bread Company, I highly suggest seeking them out, nativebread.com. That's a free plug. It is incredible, and it's been changing the way that I'm able to bake, cook, and serve the meals of my family. If you don't have native bread where you are, I am so sorry, but you need to find a good quality artisan gluten-free bread. There's a couple you can find online, and I can put some links to those if you're not able to get native. Today I'm going to use the sourdough bread. They also offer a rye and a rosemary garlic, which are also really tasty. All right, so let's talk breadcrumbs. Stuffing is generally made with day-old or hard bread, kind of stale. You can tell these are hard as a rock. So it's kind of difficult to get the moisture out of specifically this gluten-free bread, but I've found that if I cube up the bread, put it on a big cookie sheet, and put it in a 200-degree oven for 1 to 2 hours, it definitely jump-starts that process. And I love this stuffing because you can make it totally ahead of time. I mean, you could make it months ahead of time, freeze it, and pull it out, and it's still going to be just as good. So I've cubed up an entire loaf. So I have about 5 or 6 cups of bread here of the native sourdough, and you can notice they're roughly about 1-inch cubes, and they're already ready to go and dry. So now we're going to do veggies. All right, so let's talk veggies. This is just a traditional celery stuffing. It's not oyster dressing or any of that sausage stuff that you might have had growing up as a kid. So I have 3 ribs of celery, and I'm going to cut up an onion and 1 clove of garlic. So I've just cut the celery down the middle, and it's just easy to chop these up together. And if you watch that knife skill video, hopefully you've got your knife skills down pat. You notice I'm using that very important claw grip so that all of my fingers are safe all the way down to the end of that celery. All right, here goes onion time. So I'm going to dice up this onion, and onions get to me, especially when I'm prepping for Thanksgiving. I tend to use a lot of onions. So I always have my onion goggles handy so I'm not crying in the corner. And it really affects my kids, even if I'm chopping an onion in the same room and they're doing their homework in the dining room table, they tend to be affected. So they do make kids onion goggles as well. So I think I found those on Amazon, like where you can find everything else, right? I think I have like 15 Amazon boxes that come every single day. So this is a crowd favorite. I'm a huge fan of stuffing. I think it's a love-hate relationship. You either love it or you don't. Here's my 1 clove of garlic that I'm just gonna mince. And then my pan, I've got it on a medium heat. A little bit of olive oil in the pan, and in will go our veggies. Here's my handy dandy bench scraper so that I don't lose half of my loot all the way over. In sauteing the veggies, what we're looking for is just a nice softening, and the onions will get translucent, which means a little clear in color. It'll take anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes on a medium setting. So once the veggies are almost done, that's when I'm going to add the garlic clove. So I'm just going to mince this out myself. You could always use a garlic press. You don't want to add the garlic early on with the other vegetables because it only takes, it's so small, number one, but it only takes about 30 seconds to release its aroma. And if you put it in too early in the cooking process, it will burn. So you don't want burnt garlic smell or taste in your veggies. So I'm just going to stir that around. Like I said, it takes about 30 to 60 seconds till you start to get that nice garlic aroma, and then you know the veggies are good to go. So that's probably good. We're going to go ahead and turn this off, and I want to let the veggies rest or get to about room temperature, because when we make this stuffing and put it together, we're using raw eggs, and you don't want to scramble your eggs. It's not a breakfast casserole. All right, so our veggies are cooked and we're letting them rest. I'm going to take this time to just add a little bit of salt and pepper just to the veggies. It's nice to add seasoning along the way. And I'll season the stuffing as we move on. So in my stuffing, I just love fresh herbs, specifically sage. And around Thanksgiving time, you're just inundated with bundles and bundles of fresh thyme and sage, which is really nice. So I'm going to put a couple tablespoons of fresh sage. Ah, it smells so good. And I'm going to put about half that of thyme. So the little sticks on thyme, you want to kind of get those off. So if you imagine, like if this is a tree and you're just going to take the leaves off the tree. Some of the flimsier stems at the top, you can go ahead and use those, but I wouldn't use any of the hard ones. All right, so I'm just going to chop these herbs up together. So I kind of gather them in a bunch, move the bunch around, and you want them nice and small. It's going to release a lot of the fresh herb flavor. And while generally the rule is putting fresh herbs at the end of a dish, I'm going to go ahead and put these in all together at the beginning. And you can use dried herbs. So generally if you're using a couple of tablespoons, it's about half of dried. So if I use 2 to 3 tablespoons of fresh sage, you're going to use about a tablespoon of dried, just because it's a lot denser in flavor. All right, so that's all going to go in here with our breadcrumbs. We're going to also put in 4 eggs and just lightly whip those, just makes it easier to break it up. So you really want your veggies to be nice and cool before you mix everything together. And then Thanksgiving time is about the butter, but we don't have dairy butter. Although Earth Balance Sticks is a really good substitute. So I've got a stick of just melted Earth Balance, yes, a whole stick, to go in here. And I'm going to mix that in. I'm going to put the veggies right on top. All right, so I got my veggie, herbs, my eggs. Time for the salt and pepper. So in doing essentially a casserole, you want to think of seasoning it pretty heavy. There's a lot of bread. There's going to be a lot of liquid to absorb. And you can also taste the stuffing before you put it in the pan if you're not afraid of raw eggs. It's kind of like a cookie dough situation. When I'm making meatloaf, or meatballs, I'm able to make a little tester meatball to see if they're good and the seasoning's right, but I'm not going to make a tester stuffing. So you can always test one of the breadcrumbs and see if you like where the seasonings are. I'm actually going to put some bone broth in. So this is chicken. If it was Thanksgiving time and you see turkey broth sometimes or turkey stock, they have that. That's a great addition, but definitely from the poultry family. And it's nice to add bone broth. You're just going to get a little bit extra collagen and vitamins. So I'm putting about 1 to 2 cups, and it's going to be a little bit soupy at first. My breadcrumbs are really dry, so it's going to take a while for all of them to soak in and become nice and moist. So giving that a good stir. Also at holiday time, I'm a huge fan of these throwing away foil trays. So whether you're taking a dish to someone's house and you don't want to sit and wait for everyone to be done eating and then wash your pan at someone else's house, these are a really great way to travel. And they can be like, hey, keep the leftovers, throw it away. It makes cleanup really easy, especially on a day like Thanksgiving where there are so many dishes to do. So again, I'm going to make this stuffing, and you can freeze it at this point, or you can go ahead and put it in the refrigerator if it's the week of Thanksgiving. I'm going to put a little bit of Earth Balance on this pan. All right, so I've greased the pan. You can also use coconut spray or olive oil spray. And I'm going to go ahead and put this stuffing right in the pan. At this point, you can make a judgment call and saying, does it look a little dry? Does it need a little more broth? And you can also make that call right before you bake it. I'm going to add a little bit onto the top to help it soak up. So I'm going to bake this in a 350-degree oven covered with foil. Then I'm going to take the foil off for about the last 15 minutes. So you're going to bake roughly 45 to 60 minutes, just depending on everyone's oven's a little different. But you want to be the inside to be the temperature 165 degrees, which is the same temperature as poultry. So let's also talk about eating the stuffing from inside the turkey. It's definitely a no-no because you never know what that temperature is. The turkey could be totally cooked, but that stuffing gets all the drippings from the turkey, which makes it really good and flavorful, but it may not get hot enough. I think the time of eating the stuffing from the turkey has come and gone, unless you're really careful and use the meat thermometer. All right, so this is going in the oven. We'll see how it turns out. Here we have a beautiful baked traditional celery stuffing. You notice the tops are really brown. It looks really moist and flavorful. It's ready for entertaining. Nice and moist all the way through.